Different day, same, well, you know the rest.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. This is Ty Gonzalez for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And as always, if you want to hear from me, my co-host Colby even more and help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. So, firstly, Colby doesn't know that I'm doing this. One, because I don't even know if I'm going to release this episode. I mean, if you're listening to it, I did, but this is kind of a sit in front of my laptop and talk to a microphone and see what happens type of thing. So if I don't like it, I'm probably going to can it. And two, Colby and I actually decided, I don't know, a couple of hours ago that we were going to take today off because with the way that last night's game went for the Mariners, we felt like we were just going to wind up being a broken record after yesterday's episode, pretty much say the same thing and have the same conversation. And we also didn't know, how many of you would actually want to consume Mariners content, want to hear from us. We could also use a little bit of a break talking about this team. But, I watched a little bit more ball tonight, and the out-of-town scoreboard actually shaped up pretty nice for the Mariners, thankfully, which is not necessarily a great thing, but it's a silver lining at the very least. And so we'll talk a little bit about that on this show, and we'll also talk a little bit about what some of the Mariners players had to say after this game, because I saw some quotes via Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times that I wanted to quickly touch on. And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, I have this like virtual background going on right now, and it's like cutting off most of my body. It's just an absolute mess, which is kind of intentional because I wanted to try and add some sort of like comedic element to what is ultimately otherwise going to be a pretty down show. And I also just realized that my pop filter on my microphone is the same color as the green screen. So yeah, this is just a mess. Like I said, just like the Mariners, who lost again tonight. Well, I'm recording on Tuesday night, so I'm not going to clarify that anymore. The Mariners lost tonight 6-5 to the Tampa Bay Rays. They've lost yet another series on the road. And I guess the nicest thing that I have to say about their performance tonight is that at least it didn't look like they gave up like they did last night in game one. So, yay. It was a solid enough night for the offense. They hit the 3 home runs in a single inning. I forget which inning it was, and I'm not going to look it up because honestly, I don't really want to talk too much about the specifics of this game. That's not really why I'm doing this show. But they get 3 home runs in 1 inning from Cal, who hits his 51st of the year, Julio, and Jorge Polanco, who hits a ball out of the stadium. And they had an opportunity there in the 9th inning. Bases loaded, nobody out. And they're able to push one across the plate, but not the tying run, and nothing more, obviously. But it still wasn't like a great performance by the offense. It was little moments here and there, not really much of a consistent outing from the bats today. But the problem, once again, really the pitching. Brian Wu, not super sharp. He only goes 5 in this one, gives up 3. Another rough night for the bullpen. Another rough outing for Caleb Ferguson. Gabe Spire can't execute tonight. There just aren't many things that the Mariners are doing well right now. Whether it's the pitching, timely hitting, doesn't really matter. They're just not getting enough of it right now. And so, as a result, they are now 1-4 on this road trip. They will try to avoid getting swept by the Rays, who are now back to 500 and are 3.5 games back of the Mariners. Mariners can secure the season tiebreaker against them with the win tomorrow. But this is a Rays team that is starting to get a little life again and feel like, hey, maybe we have an outside shot here. I mean, we just took at least 2 of 3 from the team that's currently in the spot that we want. So, yeah, obviously they still have to leapfrog a couple of teams, but yeah, after you let the Guardians kind of see a glimmer of hope, now you're giving the Rays a glimmer of hope in the postseason race. It isn't much of one, but it is one to a certain degree. And specifically on Brian Wu, now, his streak of going 6+ innings ended his last time out, and he isn't able to start his next streak tonight. Only goes 5 in this one, like I said. And now presents a little bit of a different issue in this rotation. Potentially a potential issue. Because like we've already talked about all of Luis Castillo's struggles, the uncertainty around Bryce Miller and what you're going to get on a start-to-start basis from him. Logan Gilbert struggles to get deep into games. Now, Brian Wu has blown past his career high in innings. He has more wear on his body than he ever has in any season ever before. And that's the one guy that you actually trust in this rotation right now. At least he's the guy that you trust the most. But now you have pushed him past that threshold and then some, and you're going to continue to do so. And that doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden he's, it's going to go off the rails here. But now you're in uncharted waters with, again, the one guy that you really, really, really trust in this rotation. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on here. In general, today, I got to say the vibes were weird with this club. The day starts with the report that, the clubhouse wasn't open to the media at its usual time. Turns out that they were having a team meeting in there. Lou Piniella was there for it. And the energy around these guys, kind of just reading their body language, and obviously I'm not an expert in that department, but just trying to read their body language a little bit tonight. Something was off. The energy was definitely different, but I don't know if it was necessarily like in a good way, They more so looked like, oh God, we're blowing this and now we're on tilt and now we're all kind of pressing in our own way. And you definitely can't have that. When things are going sideways, and we've heard the players talk about this, about how, guys are just trying to do a little too much because things are just going so poorly. Pretty sure Cal said that last week after the last road trip. So you can't have that. They obviously need to start playing better, but you can't be doing that where you start to try and do too much. You just got to get back to playing your game. And obviously you have the very weird ejection where Dom Canzone gets run. And he said after the game that he swears he didn't say anything. Christopher Negron apparently was pointing to the stands. So maybe it was a fan that the umpire heard, or maybe just Dom's trying to cover him for himself. I don't know. But Dan goes out there and he gets run for the second time this season, but it wasn't really much of a fired up ejection. It was more like he was just kind of confused and like he was mad, but he didn't really get his money's worth. I don't know. Just kind of weird. And so, Manny Acta's running the show for the majority of the game. And vibes were just off. And don't get me started on the bunt, on having Luke Raley bunt. Like, I know it led to a run, but runners at first and second, you're down, 1 at the time? Yeah, it was 4-3 at the time. Luke Raley, especially in that ballpark, can easily crank a 3-run shot, which is really what you need. You shouldn't be playing for 1 or 2 there, especially kind of at the midway point of the game with how shaky your bullpen is. I'd rather let Luke go up there and take a couple of hacks and see if he can put one over the wall or put one in the gap at the very least, or put one down the line. Whatever. I just rather see him swing. Again, I get that it led to a run. I would have rather they had just let Luke try and get more out of that situation, but whatever. Just another annoying game and a long line of annoying games that this team has played, specifically on the road. And I just don't get what is ultimately going on. Some of the players spoke to the media after the game about their struggles. And so we're going to go over some of those quotes in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime and FanDuel. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a Mariners game, either by yourself or with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and suddenly you realize, I want to be in the stands. Well, that's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. For instant reactions following every Mariners game, be sure to tune in to the Mariners postcast with Anderson Hurst and Christopher Crawford, available on both the Locked On Mariners YouTube and podcast feeds. Be sure to go show those guys some love, because for as rough as it is for Colby and I to talk about this team, for me to talk about them right now, can't imagine having to hop on live right after watching this garbage that we've been watching the last 2 road trips. So go show Anders and Chris some love. They do great work. Also, Locked On has put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to check that out. So some of the Mariners players spoke to the media after the game tonight. Mostly, what you would expect. Nothing groundbreaking, really. But it was important to at least read these out here in case you missed them. These are all via Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times. First quote here comes from Brian Wu, who says, quote, "You just got to take accountability for it. I mean, this point of the year, you can make all the excuses you want. You just got to play better. You got to be better. You got to have more urgency. I think all the guys in the locker room, especially the guys that have been here the last couple of years, are sick and tired of the last couple of years of what has happened in August and September. It's up to us to flip the script and do something about it. And that's all it really comes down to." That sounds pretty familiar to what I said on the show yesterday. Just no real sense of urgency. And it's ultimately on the players to turn this thing around. Cal Raleigh also spoke with the media saying, quote, "You don't want to be in that situation again for 3 years in a row. That's just the truth. There's no sugarcoating it. That would be a terrible, terrible way to go out, but it's our job to do everything we can to push through and make it a reality of being in the playoffs." Yeah, there's really no way around it. A good chunk of the players that are here right now were here for when they got swept by the Astros in the ALDS, when they blew that great opportunity to win the division in 2023, when they were, I can't remember, were they up a game, they were tied in the AL West. Either way, they had a great opportunity to win the division in 2023, and they didn't even make the playoffs. And then we all know what happened last year, right? 10-game lead, etc. Don't make the playoffs. Yeah. And so you're getting to the point now where you are earning the reputation of, I hate to say it, of being chokers, right? Like, you blow this again for the third straight year, don't make the playoffs again for the third straight year. And especially now this year, where you did finally get the help that you needed from and the support that you needed and wanted from ownership and from the front office, not in the off season, of course, but definitely at the trade deadline, with them going out and getting the two best bats available, despite them being rentals. And you blow that. That's a tough look. That's a tough look, right? Because we all remember what they said and what some of these guys said, including Cal Raleigh, after watching the Rangers celebrate getting into the postseason on their field after their ownership group actually invested in that ball club, for 2 consecutive off seasons, spent real dollars. And obviously the Mariners didn't do that, but this year, but at the trade deadline, they went out and again, they got the 2 best bats that moved. They had by far the most impactful trade deadline that any team had this summer. And so, like we said, after the deadline, this was ultimately on the players. And look, could the Mariners have done more at the deadline? Yes. Like we talked about, they should have went out and gotten another arm on top of Caleb Ferguson. Didn't have to be John Duran, but they needed another, Danny Coulombe type, Phil Maton. I know that's just a guy that I use as an example, by the way. I know that he's been struggling since he went to Texas, but again, there were just so many relievers that moved at the deadline. You could have gotten another one of those guys. They didn't, but that's not why you're losing games right now. Like Friday, for example, which was a game that you lost in large part because your bullpen blew it. But you lost that game because the guys that you would be banking on to perform in those moments just blew it. Like the guys that you would be banking on, even if you did go out and get another arm, they just blew it. Right? You would still be using, Andres Munoz and Matt Brash in that situation. Tonight, you would still be using Gabe Spire in that situation. So you're not losing games right now, really, because of anything the front office didn't do at the deadline. And as much as I love to drag ownership, I love to do that. We both love to do that here on this show. This isn't an ownership issue. This isn't a Jerry DiPoto issue. This isn't a Justin Hollander issue. This is strictly a player issue. This is on the players. This is on everyone in that clubhouse to get the job done. JP Crawford also had this quote. This is kind of the big one. Quote, "It's not a lack of focus. It's not a lack of work. This is the hardest working group of men I've been with ever in my career. It's not any of that. It's just sometimes when we get knocked down in the fight, we stay down, and we can't have that right now." Woof. He just said it. He just said and confirmed what we all feel like we've been seeing, but we didn't know for sure. And that's that the Mariners have quit when things get too hard for them. Like last night. That's not what you want to hear about a team that is currently in a playoff spot. And I don't really know where that came from, because we have seen over the course of the season this team find ways to claw back into games where it looked like they were done on several occasions. So why is this suddenly happening now? Why is it we're down 5-0 and Luis Castillo had a bad start? Well, I guess we're just going to pack it in now. Like, where did that come from? Why is that happening all of a sudden? So, yeah, that's not a super encouraging quote from JP Crawford there, who is supposed to be your captain. So it's great in all that, they acknowledged the struggles and they're taking accountability and yada, 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 whatever. But talk is cheap, especially at this point in the year. You just got to go out and perform. The only thing that's going to fix this, like Brian Wu said, is going out and winning some baseball games. And that's going to start tomorrow. You cannot get swept by the Tampa Bay Rays. You could not allow that to happen. And then you need to go into Atlanta against the likes of Chris Sale and Hurston Waldrep and Spencer Strider, and you got to find a way to win 2 or 3. Fortunately for the Mariners, the rest of the league has been pretty forgiving. We'll talk about the out-of-town scoreboard and how that worked out pretty well for the Mariners tonight in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Upside. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code SEASON, that's SEASON, and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. And at first I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code SEASON for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code SEASON. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. God, how cursed is this virtual background thing? I haven't been looking at it the whole time, but I've noticed at points like it's almost enveloped my entire body and the screen has almost been just entirely blue, but it's hilarious. I mean, the alternative here is that you stare at a brown wall behind me. So I don't know. I think this is more fun. So yeah, I watched some ball tonight. That wasn't the Mariners. Actually, this wasn't one of those times where I was like, I just don't want to watch any baseball. I want to pretend that baseball doesn't exist. I watched a little bit of, and this was while the Mariners Rays game was going on. I put the Royals Angels game on the second monitor. Angels win 5-1. So the Mariners magic number actually is down to 22. The Astros got smoked by the Yankees, so nothing has changed on the division front. And the Rangers also lost to the Arizona Diamondbacks 5-3. So while they are technically ahead of the Royals by a game in the standings, the Royals results still matter for the magic number right now because you have the tiebreaker on the Rangers. We don't know if they're going to have the tiebreaker or not over the Royals. So while the Rangers have a game up on the standings on the Royals, it's technically they're still technically the same amount of games back of you as the Royals are because of the tiebreaker. Does that make sense? So yeah, the Royals results more so matter for the magic number. So it's down to 22. And once again, the Mariners on this road trip have been kind of saved by the out-of-town scoreboard. I mean, well, that's one way you can look at it. The way that I'm more so looking at it, and yes, I'm taking the negative route here, is that it's another missed opportunity. Another missed opportunity to put more ground between you and the Royals and the Rangers, etc. And another missed opportunity to gain ground in the AL West. The Astros, correct me if I'm wrong, are 20-22 over their last 42 games. They have been pretty mediocre for a while now. And yeah, the Mariners have gained some ground over that span of time, but not as much as they probably should have. I think it's reasonable to say that the Mariners should be in first place in the AL West right now. And it's really just because of what has happened on the road these last two road trips. You know, they go 2-7 on the last one. They're 1-4 on this one. I mean, they only need 4 of those games to flip, and they're in first place right now. Like all alone. They're not in a tie. They're in first place in the AL West if they just win 4 of those games that they didn't. And so this goes back again to what I said on yesterday's episode, or earlier today for me. The Mariners have to have a killer instinct, because here's the thing, right? The Astros are 20-22 over their last 42. They've been painfully mediocre. But is anyone concerned about the Astros right now? Maybe Astros fans are. I don't know. I wouldn't be. I certainly am not from the outside looking in. I would assume most of you aren't either. Like in terms of their ability to get to the postseason and even do damage in the postseason. And you know why? Because they have shown time and time again, when it matters most, they have that killer instinct. It shouldn't even be a question right now if the Mariners are a playoff team. It shouldn't. They should have this stuff locked up. All we should be talking about right now is seeding and how they're going to optimize their playoff roster. Those are the things that we should be talking about right now. It is ridiculous that I am watching the Texas Rangers without Nathan Eovaldi, without Corey Seager, without Marcus Semien, and hoping, praying that they lose. With Rowdy Tellez and Dylan Moore on their roster. Are you kidding me? You know, I'm seeing things today on Twitter like, oh, Rangers are making the AL wild card race interesting. Royals are making the AL wild card race interesting. The AL wild card race should not be interesting. And it is completely the Mariners' fault. They have no one but themselves to blame. And if the Royals make the playoffs or the Rangers make the playoffs or the Rays make the playoffs, whoever, it is not because of what they did. It's because the Mariners blew it. It's because the Mariners handed it to them on a silver freaking platter. Get it together. Find that killer instinct. Go win 3 of the next 4. Go back home to where you're actually good at baseball and you can actually hit for some reason at the most hitter suppressive ballpark in the entire sport. And get back on the horse. And then all hands on deck for the next time you go on the road. All right. That's going to do it for the show. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. I've been your host, Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.